BloombergQuint.
Vodafone Idea has made it clear that it is not going to be able to shell out the entire adjusted gross revenue dues owed to the government. The beleaguered telecom operator has written a letter to the government. Ragini Saxena of Bloomberg News joins us now for more. Ragini, what are you learning about this?
Hi, as we all know that the court ruling on AGR dues has been a severe blow to the telecom sector, and in the latest development, Vodafone Idea has written a letter to the government saying that it is unable to pay 4 billion dues to the government. And they have also given suggestions such as setting off the GST credits and making the staggered payments over 15 years. They have also suggested the government to reduce the license fees and implement a floor price.
Okay, so some measures or a letter written by Vodafone requesting a few things. Ragini, thanks so much for bringing that to us. That is Vodafone Idea officially saying that they will not be able to pay the entire adjusted gross revenues, mind you, and not saying that they will not be able to pay at all, but some requests that they've made to the government as well. This is turning out to be interesting. There was expectations that the government will give some relief as well. We haven't seen any signs of that coming out thus far. Let's wait and watch if that does happen. But moving tracks, Indian Pharma has been going through more than its fair share of scrutiny of late. Darshan spoke to industry veteran Kewal Handa to find out what to make of the recent developments. Listen in.
Okay, in conversation with Kewal Handa, he's the former MD of Pfizer. He's also a pharma market veteran and he knows the industry inside out. Thank you, Mr. Handa, for speaking to BloombergQuint. Firstly, what's your sense of what direction is the Indian pharma industry headed on? We'll speak about granular details in a while, but overall, what's your view?
So the pharma industry is really passing through a little bit of tough time. We have not seen a double-digit growth happening regularly and consistently. Challenges happening in domestic front as well as there are challenges globally, particularly in US with the pricing. And we also see on and off the inspections from the US holding back the inventories and the supplies to US. So by and large, the pharma industry is now passing through a phase where they have to grow from here because they have seen the low. So I'm expecting a growth of around about 10 to 11% in the coming year.
What's your sense of you've been part of a large MNC group? Have things changed over the past few years? We've seen that the performance of some of the MNC companies on the financial side have really done well. So what's the change that's happened over the past few years?
So there are 2-3 changes that have happened in MNC. A is some of them have got their patents and therefore they were able to maximize the opportunity in India, and that's why you've seen the growth. Some of them have used a very different model of giving their patents as licensing, and therefore they have been able to get earnings here. The cost-cutting, restructuring of companies are being happening, but at the same time, we have also seen some MNCs like JSK not turning out good results. So there is a mix in case of MNC. Some of them have really done very well. Some of them are still struggling, and some of them have to really get their act together.
You spoke about how the US FDA has been, inspecting a lot of plants, and they did it a few years ago. Then there was a lull. Again, they have started becoming extremely aggressive in, inspecting plants. What's your sense? Is it justified that the action they have taken? Are they scrutinizing Indian firms much harsher than some of the peers overseas?
Well, by and large, my general comment is that they are not harsher on India, because if you see the inspection, they do it across the world. And there are more cases with the Chinese companies than with the Indian companies. So we cannot make a general comment that they are harsher to India. Of course, you have seen challenges with the best of the companies, and recently we have seen challenges with Arvindo. So, there are challenges on quality and documentation. So we have not really got our act right across all these segments of approvals. And I think still there are some challenges, and we should take this as a part of learning process and evolving as we are growing around and developing the US market.
What does your interaction with your peers in the industry talk about the coronavirus impact on the pharma industry? Will it be severe? Will India benefit in any way from this?
So I will comment it from the two-fold, where A is the availability of the medicine. Normally, the imported materials are kept at least for 3 to 6 months. And then there is a pipeline inventory with the company, with the stockist, with the CNFA for around about 2 months. So if I say it's about 3 to 5 months of minimum inventory a company should be carrying. So we would not see a shortage at least till May or so. But beyond that, if the supplies don't come, we are in real challenge. So that's one part of it. The other part of it, the dependence upon the API and the intermediates with China is pretty large. So here is an opportunity where the government, the industrialist should, I believe the government called for a meeting, but nobody really spoke about how to develop an API industry in India, how do we develop a cluster, what type of benefits the government can give immediately, and how do we upgrade the technology and scale the business. I think those are the dialogues we need to have with the government rather than talking about, I will ship it something from here, ship it something for them, which is very transactional, overcoming the current problem. But the larger problem still remains, and I think this needs to be addressed upfront. And I hope somebody has that quantum to talk to the government, says, let's sit down and we'll look at the API opportunities.
While we've seen that the trend for the domestic trends month over month have been improving, they are growing close to double digit. What's your sense? Will tough times stay here for the exporters, especially the generic makers?
So now there's a great opportunity for the exporters, with the Chinese having some challenges. I think some of the intermediates we have already started manufacturing. It's a great challenge to really shore up and show up the quality of your product, scale up your opportunities and start exporting to countries where you are not exporting. We have challenges with Japan, we have challenges with US, and if these two markets, big markets, go off, we really will have a major challenge in exports. We need to stabilize US at any cost, and that's where the focus should be.
Okay, Mr. Handa, we leave it at that. Thank you so much for speaking to BloombergQuint.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Right, that's the view from an industry veteran, Kewal Handa, talking about the pharma industry. He does expect growth, double-digit growth at that, early double digits, but expects growth nevertheless. And I think we've heard these comments in the past as well, wherein there is a set of repeated actions around Indian pharma, and then people who look at it from a really long-term perspective say that it's not too harsh. It's happened in the past wherein a lot of these companies came under scrutiny and people came and said that this is just normal course. It seems to be normal course right now as well, but the damage it does to stock prices is quite strong. Let's see if this is proving to be any different this time around. But let's move on to one more mid-sized name, small cap name. Borosil Glass Works is undergoing a restructuring exercise. One of the country's largest glassware makers is looking to hive off its consumer business and leave the scientific glassware arm in the listed entity. Joining us now to explain the structure and the rationale is the MD and CEO Shreevar Kheruka. Shreevar, good having you. Thanks much for joining in. Good morning to you, Neeraj here. Can you tell us the latest on the restructuring? I'm sure you've given out the rationale, but good if you can recount that again and the timelines for the same.
So actually this has been going on for the last year and a half, where we proposed this, and now it's been approved by all the relevant authorities. What we're doing is we are converting our consumer and scientific products company into a company called Borosil Limited. So that will be listed in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And the solar business will come into a company called Borosil Renewables Limited. The idea behind this restructuring is to eliminate cross-holdings that currently the companies have, to reduce related party transactions, and then also to give enhanced shareholder value by giving shareholders opportunities to participate in either or both of the businesses independently. So we believe that this whole process should be through in the next, say, 8 weeks by end of April. And at the end of the process, there will be 2 listed companies. One is called Borosil Limited, which will house the consumer products and the scientific products business. And the other will be Borosil Renewables Limited, which will house the solar glass business of the group.
Okay. So you got the approval. By when would this officially be consummated?
So, well, actually, the approval has been received, like you said already. Actually the action's already done. Everything that had to be done is already done. The only thing which is pending to be done, we have a second record date where some shareholders of one of the companies will get shares of the other company, which will happen, I believe, on 9th of March. And then subsequent to that, there'll be a listing of Borosil Limited, which will take another 6 to 8 weeks, like I said. So everything should be consummated by end of April, as per the timelines. Although I would like to say that everything's not in our control. There are regulatory authorities involved, so it does take, its own time as per the norms.
Yeah, but as things stand, you presume in your own wisdom that by end of April things should get consummated. Fair call. Now let's talk about the businesses. You can start with either of the businesses and tell us how do you expect, what do you see in the current scenario, and how do you expect the scenario to move over the course of the next, say, couple of years?
Well, so if I talk about Borosil Limited, which will now house the consumer products and scientific products business, that's the company that I am the managing director of. That company has had very good growth, or those two divisions have had very good growth in the past few years. There is a general shift in the market for consumer. We do mainly kitchen and table products made from glass and steel. And there has been a general shift in the market away from plastic, which has given us a strong tailwind. We expect that to continue. We expect the new products that we have been launching, both from a design perspective as well as from a value for money perspective, to continue delivering high growth, because customers increasingly entertain at home. People want to call friends over. They want to have show their kitchen, deliver products or their food in good cutlery. So I think there are a lot of tailwinds which favor the growth of our consumer products business. As far as the scientific products business is concerned, we are India's leading supplier to laboratories. We've recently acquired a business which does packaging, pharmaceutical packaging for injectable drugs. And Mr. Handa was just on the show. He's actually one of our board members. He's also been advising us, helping us, get into new customer segments, and I think that's been quite helpful for us. And we've seen good growth there, although the growth will not be as high as the consumer business.
So, is it a higher margin business because of the specialized nature?
Yes. So there's the value addition in scientific is higher, specialized nature, like you mentioned. It's also the fact that in a consumer business there are many unorganized players, so therefore automatically the margins are a little bit lower. But on the scientific side, the vendor identification and the selection process for a pharma company is much longer. So therefore, the vendors that are established that have certain norms which are GMP, ISO norms which are required, not very many vendors can pass it. So therefore, that naturally allows us to have slightly higher margins on the scientific side compared to consumer.
Would you be amongst the top companies in this scientific ware business? And what's the market share, if I can loosely use that term?
So on the scientific side, we have two different verticals. We have laboratory equipment, mainly glassware. In that, we are the market leader. We have about 65% share in laboratory glassware. Whereas we have the pharma packaging, which I mentioned was for injectable drug packaging. There's another organization which is the market leader. We would be either number 2 or number 3, and that may vary from year to year in that segment.
Okay. Now, the high margin, high growth consumer wear business, Shreevar, it is a business which doesn't have a moat. I mean, there is no entry barrier, and I myself have seen a bunch of imported goods having an impact. Now, because I'm just first for the immediate term, this whole coronavirus issue that is nearly ravaged China, is it actually having a favorable impact for that industry in the near term? Because the Chinese imports, I reckon, would be off limits right now.
So I'll address the issue of the moat that you asked first, and then I'll come to coronavirus. As far as the moat is concerned, see, we have a very strong brand and a distribution channel. As there's more and more clutter in the market, I think people tend to buy what they know, because keep in mind that the products we supply have a price point starting from 200 rupees to maybe 2,000 rupees. these are not very high involvement categories where people are doing a lot of research before buying. They will go by default to a brand that they know, that they trust, for design that they like. And I believe that that itself is the moat, our brand, our distribution channel, and our ability to launch new products which are well designed. Our tagline is performs beautifully, and our products are performance oriented, and they're also very aesthetically pleasing to look at and to use. So therefore, we believe that by spending money on advertising, sales promotion, as well as by spending money on our distribution, we create a moat around the business. And that's evident from our growth over the last few years. I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, our consumer business was less than 100 crores. This year, I think we'll cross more than 400 crores of revenue just on the consumer side. So even then, we're very small. We're just scratching the surface of the demand possibilities on that space. So I think the moat is being created as we speak, and every year the moat becomes wider and deeper. As far as Corona is concerned, yes, we do. We have manufacturing in India, which will be benefited, frankly, from the impact of any disruption in the supply chain from China. But as far as our own imports from China are concerned, we generally have inventory which can suffice us for a period of time. We do have a very strong risk management policy in the organization, which allows us, or which has made us do alternate sourcing. So we've always had 2 sources for our main products. So we could diversify away. And when I say 2 sources, I don't mean both are in China. There's also sourcing from Europe, from Southeast Asia, from the US. So we have the ability to diversify away from China. Obviously, there will be some short-term impact. But I do not think that this is going to be a long-term, issue. Maybe it's a quarter or 2 where you may have some disruption.
Okay. Fair call. Shreevar, one final question then. You've grown from whatever number you said, 100 crores a few years ago, to 400 crores on top line on the consumer business in the current year. What's the run rate that you anticipate in the consumer business, say, over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years? Because I heard you mention that you're just scratching the bottom of the surface right now.
Yeah, so frankly, I think the guidance that we've always been maintaining is to maintain a CAGR of 15 to 20%. Although obviously the last few years the CAGR has been higher, but 15 to 20%. When I don't look at year-on-year numbers, but if I look at, say, a medium-term 3 to 5 year horizon, could we double in that horizon? I think we should. Maybe can we do better? I think we could do better, but at the moment we would be targeting somewhere like that, doubling in 3 to 4 years' time.
Doubling in 3 to 4 years' time. Well, we wish you all the best for that, Shreevar. And thanks so much for speaking to us today and giving us the details of the corporate action as well.
Thank you so much.
That's the view from Borosil. The consumer business has grown well. The laboratory business, they expect it to remain steady. And the entire process of the 2 companies getting listed, I think, if I'm not wrong, he said will get consummated by the end of April. By the way, the market's not looking in ship shape. We're down at the lowest point of the day as we speak, about 0.85% lower for the Nifty Bank, and the Sensex and the Nifty about 0.75%. So it's not turning out to be a great morning. And the world markets haven't looked all that great either, because the Dow futures as we speak are trading about 200, 220 points lower. With that, it's a wrap on this leg of Indian Open. Thanks so much for watching. The FNO show takes forward the action on the other side.